We're here today to share the stories of our Collegiate Mental Health Innovation Council members. CMHIC is dedicated to finding and highlighting student leaders who filled gaps in traditional supports and services on their campus. Stay tuned to hear their stories and their programs in their own words.
Hi everybody, I'm here with Kaileigh Conti, and she's going to be sharing about her experience. She's been an awesome member of the council this year, so I'm going to give you a little bit about her background, and then we're going to talk about what she's learned and some of the biggest lessons she's found navigating mental health advocacy and supporting your own mental health at the same time. So Kaileigh is a rising senior at Boston College. She is majoring in applied psychology and human development with a double minor in psychology and medical humanities, health, and culture. So she really likes school and classes. It sounds like. Her personal experience was really the source of her passion for mental health advocacy and the importance and right of students with disabilities to be able to stay in academic settings. The organization that she was involved in on campus is called Lean On Me, and she can share a little bit about that with us. But I first wanted to kick it off to Kaileigh to share a little bit about herself and her background and why this work is so important.
Okay. So hi everyone. I guess I have just a deep-rooted passion, I guess, for mental health advocacy. Just because of my own experiences and my own kind of roller coaster journey, I came to college and realized that a lot of the people around me were struggling too, and just nobody seemed to talk about it. So I wanted to start to get that conversation going, and since I've been here, so it's been 3 years now, I've seen a lot of changes being made by other students. So it's clear that people want to support everyone and help. So I just think that being a part of this opportunity gave me kind of insight into how people all over the country are doing it and getting new ideas. So yeah, it was really a lot to learn, and it was good. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Do you mind telling everyone a little bit about Lean On Me, what it is, what they do, starting off with kind of an overview of the program?
Yeah. So Lean On Me started at MIT after they had a series of unfortunate suicides. So they came up with this algorithm that I could not attempt to explain, but basically you just text a number and then you're anonymously paired up with another student in your school. And from there you could talk about, it's used for non-emergencies, but if you were to text in and show signs of maybe being suicidal or needing more help than just the peer support platform, they can connect you to other resources. So a few years ago, someone started to work on a proposal for BC to get their own chapter, and then it finally was up and running this year. And everyone, I think, was a little bit nervous about whether or not kids would text in, because it is such a stigma. And so I feel like, for me at least, it's kind of nerve-wracking to reach out and say, I am struggling. So we were a little bit nervous about how many people would be texting in. And after the first week, they were saying that they were getting more than they expected, and things were going really well, because we're all trained from little stressors to big life problems that are super demanding and need assistance right away. So it really could help anyone from having too much homework that night and you are overwhelmed to much more serious areas. And it actually isn't, it's definitely a process to start your own chapter, but if you go to their website, they've made it very easy to understand and walk through. So yeah, I think there's 8 schools involved now, which is really cool that it's spreading like that.
Awesome. Is there a process for training for folks who would want to be involved or start something on their campus?
So I'm not sure about the exec board, if they had to do more or not, but from what I experienced, I had to there were different lectures. Someone from Samaritans came, the suicide hotline, and talked about that. And then there were also these online assessments trying to get you to understand the full scope of a lot of different situations. And then after we went through all the training, we had an assessment, where we would get prompts from what potential students could be saying and then how you'd respond. And someone would review it, and if it was good, you were good to go. And if you needed a little tweaking, they would meet with you again. So it was really the executive board was making sure that everyone that was going to participate really was comfortable and confident with what they were doing, which I thought was really impressive because they could have just thrown anyone and might not have worked as well.
Yeah, that's I've heard the leadership is really important. For support like this where, there's no appointment, you just text whenever you need support of any kind. What are the hours like for availability and for the students who are volunteering?
Yeah, I think that it was a minimum amount of hours either per week or per month, and then once a month you had to be up like for the later shifts because they wanted to make sure someone was on the line 24/7. But really, like, when it started out and I first heard that it was going to be a thing, it was a year before it actually launched. So when I went to the first meeting, there were definitely at least a dozen people there, like, really excited about it. And then when I went to the meeting this past year, it, like, tripled. So we had a good number of people that would be on the line where it wasn't too demanding or too stressful for me to be a supporter. I didn't constantly feel like, okay, I need to be on the hotline, like I need to make sure nobody's like waiting. It was never a concern, which was really great. And because it's a lot of pressure on the supporter too to make sure like you're doing the best that you can and helping them and they're leaving the conversation feeling comfortable. So that's a stressor. So having to do it for several hours would just, I think, add up. So they managed it really well with who was on when.
Awesome. And on that note, I did want to talk a little bit about something that Kaileigh and I had been talking about earlier, which was, when I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder when I was in college, and even now, I'm not undiagnosed with anything I was diagnosed with. I still, struggle and still have challenges, and it can be hard to navigate wanting to do as much as you can as a mental health advocate with taking care of your own mental health and advocating for yourself and being kind to yourself. And, there's so much pressure to create and share and you want to serve, but what has your experience been, Kaileigh, navigating those kind of not always at odds, but sometimes opposing feelings?
Yeah. So, I mean, I have a very similar story. I actually was diagnosed as bipolar 2 almost a year ago now, so it's a weird anniversary to have. But it's been a really big process for me to understand that I can't help anyone if I'm not taking care of myself. And so this past school year was hard for me because I was dealing with a new diagnosis, and it's not that it's better or worse, but it's not just, oh, I have depression or I get anxious. It does have a stronger, I feel like, stigma, just because I only know maybe a handful of people that have disclosed to me that they have the same diagnosis. So it is hard for me to process that and at the same time want to be able to be there for everyone else. And through the mental health council, I was seeing that everyone was doing so much and it's such great work, and I kind of felt like I was not up to par, I guess. And it was me putting a lot of pressure to really make this huge impact and change and like revolutionize mental health care at BC. And when it came down to it and I had serious mental health problems during the year, I realized like I don't need to leave this mark where it's like they make a plaque for my name. Like if I could help 5 people, even if it's my 5 closest friends, deal with whatever they're going through and making sure that people know about the resources or feel comfortable even saying, look, I am struggling, that is kind of where I'm at with accepting that that's enough. Because if I really tried to start a new chapter of something or dedicated a lot of time to some new organization, it would be great. And I'm sure that when it came to the end of the day, like I could do it, but it would be taking away from my own mental health. And at that point, it's kind of hypocritical. So I think it's really interesting that so many mental health advocates also struggle. I've seen that as a common theme, and there's also people that don't have diagnoses or anything that want to help too, and that's awesome. But I think it's just so important to like really believe in self-care when you're getting into this area in this field. If you don't, then the chances of being able to help other people is just getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah. One of the things I've always felt unfair was I'm struggling and I also have to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything is kind of broken. I get out of bed and I'm supposed to make everything better. And I think that there's such a big shift of like, you know, it's important that people bring new ideas to the table, but it's not just about one person.
Right.
And it's about, even if you bring something new, it's really about, like, folks can specialize in different things, but it's really important for, you know, we're all, you know, everybody in this work is trying to help keep people here and, you know, keep people healthy and engaged and feeling comfortable getting whatever degree of whatever support or service that they want.
Yeah, and I think it was really opened my eyes being within this little council, was that once I realized that like this isn't a one-man job, and I started to like drop little conversation with friends about like, would you be like interested in doing this or like helping with this? I did not encounter one person that was like, no, it's not for me. Like once you start talking about it and you start the conversation, there are so many people that do want to dedicate time to helping, because I mean, we can all walk around smiling and saying that we're managing things, but most people have something they worry about. It's the bare minimum. So it's not like anyone's completely immune to what we're trying to help. So yeah, there is a community out there if you just kind of expose it.
How have you been able to find people with shared experience? So is it, a lot of people are blogging, you know, on Instagram? Have you mostly just like brought, you know, it can be scary. I mean, I know like for me, it was not a secret. It didn't feel like it was a secret to anybody that I was having a hard time. But did you start by talking to the people closest to you, or how did you navigate? You mentioned like it was hard. It was not hard, but maybe like something big and new when you know, had that change in those experiences.
Yeah. Well, so I ended up in, I think it was like September. Yeah, because my birthday fell into that timeline where I ended up having to go to a hospital to be treated for my mental health, because it had gotten to the point where I was hiding it so much that I just kind of exploded. And when I came out, I realized that nobody looked at me differently because I have like a label or whatever. It was never this big shift where it was like the same thing that you said. Everyone kind of knew I was struggling, but I never really started a conversation or asked for help because I didn't want that, I don't know, reputation. But now looking back, that's so silly because I've never had anyone turn away from me because of it. But after that whole experience in the hospital, I realized that I can be open about it and not be embarrassed and not be ashamed. And the second I started to do that, I got people coming to me. Once I started putting it out there, it would kind of sit for a little and people would be like, how do we do this or that? And then I'd have one by one people being like, oh, well, this one time I had a really bad panic attack. And then people started to have conversations around me about it, either sharing their experiences or wanting to learn more. And it was so inspiring and like heartwarming because I just, in the past, never saw that to be a possibility. And then once I started to do that with my friends, I kind of reached out even a little bit more. And I started to talk a little bit more in my classes when it was about things that I had experienced. And I'd get like random emails. And then if I went on Facebook, and I would write like a little post and be like, hey, does anyone else think we need more stuff at BC for mental health? And people would respond to that. And it was really interesting to see that spark happen. And even through Lean On Me, and we have an Active Minds chapter, meeting people through those clubs, those are also people that want to help, and most of them have had shared experiences. So I think being more open and honest with myself and with the people around me, it's really shown me that I am not alone, and it's such a breath of fresh air, and it's so relieving to like let go of that feeling that I'm like damaged. So it was really, really cool experience.
That's awesome. Do you have any words of wisdom for somebody who is listening, who might have, recently been hospitalized or is just struggling or hasn't really opened up to anybody about their experiences?
Oh boy, this is like past me. I guess when I look back on it, my biggest thing, and it's so cliche, is like you need to ask for help somewhere. And it could be your best friend, it could be a parent, it could be your doctor, anyone. And you don't need to come out and be like, first thing off the bat, like give your deepest, darkest traumas or anything. Just be like, I'm having a hard time. If having a soft like intro into getting help was something that could have prevented a lot of what I ended up going through, because I was super stubborn and I wanted to do it all by myself. And the reality is, when you're facing something inside of you that people can't see, like it's not a broken arm, you can't see it inside of my head, there's more often than not, like people aren't going to know to reach out. So if you're struggling, it's never something to be ashamed of or scared of. It's a process that so many people deal with. And the whole hospitalization thing was never something I saw happening in my life. And I didn't want to go, and I fought it really hard, and I begged and I cried. And once I got there, I realized that people were doing it because they really, really cared. And once I was there, I saw how bad things have gotten, and I got to talk to people and hear their experiences. And at the end of the day, whatever help, the way you need to get it is the way you need to get it. And you can't be shy with asking for it, because it's your life. Like, you don't want to wake up every morning with this feeling, and nobody wants to be sad or anxious all the time. So why make yourself live like that if there's so many people that do care about you and love you, and they could really help change that perspective for you.
Thank you. That's awesome. So for you coming out of that and talking about the importance of your own mental health and self-care, what are some of the things that have been helpful for you in your own well-being and recovery and, transition into doing, I'm sure you were doing awesome stuff the whole time. You're just generally awesome, but you're also doing really cool stuff now in your internships in the summer. So what was the process kind of coming back around? And it seems like practicing a lot of self-compassion too.
Yeah. I go to therapy frequently, and I also have a psychiatrist for medication, so I have that side of the treatment there, which is super helpful, and I think that it is a foundation for me to do other things. In the hospital, I had to go to a lot of group meetings, and I learned a lot of good DBT skills. Like, I don't know if I need to expand on that, but a big one is mindfulness, which is just self-perspective. I guess you get to look in, kind of. And so the two biggest things that I came out of that whole experience with was grounding, which I have different exercises. Like, I Google them all the time, just things that I can read or listen to and kind of meditate and bring myself back from wherever my head's at down to earth. And I also found that journaling is really, really helpful. And being able to, on a good day or a bad day, just write, even if it's 3 sentences down, and just check in with myself and monitor, like, hey, today was bad, and it was bad because this happened, and it was triggering or whatever. To have that knowledge of my own behaviors and my actions and my thoughts is really helpful when it comes time to go to therapy and talk about things that do set me off or things that make me feel better. Having kind of like a catalog of my past experiences has been really, really helpful. And just also being social really gets me out of a lot of funk. Having friends around, or even like now my parents they've always been supportive, of course, but now it's a conversation where I can text my mom and say like, hey, today's not so good and I don't know who else to go to. Can you give me 5 minutes to just vent? I'm really lucky to have that support in my life. So I think that the therapy in combination with like self-care and then having the support system are just like 3 crucial aspects of managing whatever you're dealing with.
For folks who maybe haven't had, I think we kind of touched on this before, but have groups been like specific to mental health been, because Lean On Me is kind of one-off, you're talking to an anonymous person, have support groups or groups of other people with shared experience been something that's been helpful to you in your recovery? I know, like, you were talking about being in the hospital, and something that I've heard a lot and felt too is like when I got there, I didn't want to be there, but it was the first time I had been around groups of people who were just being totally honest.
It was so crucial for me for that recovery. That feeling of not being alone, even though rationally I know that everyone is struggling with something. Hearing it out of someone else's mouth is like, it was honestly cheesy but life-changing, because I did a 180 with how I thought about myself and what I deal with. And there's also, I know at BC that the counseling center does have kind of group therapy, which I think is really cool. And even the women's center has a group for women that have experienced some sort of trauma, like it's typically sexual assaults and trauma of that nature. And I've been to basically every group therapy thing they have on campus, and those are the times that I come back to my room and I just like let out a breath, and I'm like, okay, I'm still doing this. Other people are doing it too. Like, they don't have to be my best friend. I don't need to make friends with everyone that I go to therapy with, but like hearing it out of someone else's mouth that like, I'm struggling too, and it doesn't have to be exactly what your story is, but you're not the only one waking up and feeling like this, and you're not the only one hiding in their room. Like, there are other people out there that do want to help and want to talk about things. So I think that really, if there's things like that on other campuses and you really want shared views, I think that's like the perfect place to go.
Yeah, because I feel like it's important to have those open conversations with your friends and your family, but there's just something really valuable about having like a closed off, safe space where you're not necessarily as worried about the implications of you sharing things with the other people in the room. I think that's something that is very different from maybe your interpersonal relationships, even if you're comfortable talking about what you're struggling with too.
Totally, yeah. And talking with friends is always awesome, but it's just like, I don't have a best friend that has what I have or has gone through what I have. And there's groups here that are tailored to people with similar, if not same experiences. So having a stranger say something is a relief, and having a stranger say something that you can relate to so deeply is like very, very, very relieving. It's great. Yeah, definitely recommend that.
So while we're on this topic, it's making me think about, it's not just the mental health shift back to school, but it's also what you mentioned earlier, the academic piece. What was that like for you, and what was helpful for you coming back, transitioning back into classes, and as you're, still staying in classes, are there supports or accommodations or anything that have been helpful to you?
Yeah, the transition back was hard. I luckily had really, really compassionate, kind professors that when my mom was taking me to the hospital, I was like a wreck. So she got my professor's emails and emailed them for me saying she is going to the hospital. She explained, and they all instantly were like, honestly, like, that's very brave, and they were saying such nice things. And then when I got back, I had missed 2 weeks of class, which is a lot of class. I get nervous about missing 1 or 2 a semester, so 2 full weeks was not something that was helping me ease back in. So I met with all my professors. We made up a game plan on how to catch up but still stay moving with the class. They were all very understanding with deadlines, and even if I had to miss class again, which was way past the limit of absences allowed, they were like, if you're struggling really badly and you can't get out of bed, just send me an email, tell me you're safe, and we're good, which was so, so awesome to experience. And then, so that was first semester. And second semester, I realized that I could apply for disability accommodations through the school, which basically I sent in notes from my doctors and confirmation of my diagnosis and my treatment plan, all these things. And what they did with that is they made this letter to my professors that disclosed some information but wasn't tell all. So if I wanted to say more, I could, but that was my choice. And it just said that I have flexibility with absences and then deadlines and things like that. And it's really, really helpful. And it's also so important, I feel like, because before I was diagnosed, I was not doing well with school. I was putting things off, or I was missing deadlines by accident, and then that just makes you more stressed out, and it was hard to get to class, and I didn't know why. I couldn't articulate it. I didn't want to go to my professor and just be like, I'm sad today, I can't come. I didn't feel like I had enough reason. So then once I did reach out and I fixed all of that stuff, school has gotten incredibly less challenging when it comes to just being able to do it, which is insane. That I really didn't have to do much work for it, and it completely altered how my college experience is going. And I think they have it at every school. So if anyone's watching, look into it.
One of the things that I think people often experience, though, when they're going through that process is maybe I never felt like I had a disability, and what does it mean to have a disability, and do I deserve that? And the stigma of I'm just bad and I don't deserve extra help. What was it like for you? Did you have any of those conversations with yourself or the people around you?
Yeah, I still am having that conversation. The word disability, to me, I think of physical disability, and then if I'm applying for that, it makes me feel like I'm taking away from other people, and it's just all these things. But then I talked to actually one of my professors and also my therapist about it, just being like, am I wrong in saying I have a disability? Because sometimes I even fight the idea that I'm bipolar. I don't want it, and I sometimes really struggle to accept it. So applying for something at school where it then labels me into that category, it was very nerve-wracking. And then once I was able to have the conversations with a professor and my doctor and my parents and my friends, it came down to label or not, it's going to be something that's going to add so much to my life. And I know it sounds like such small alterations, but that safety net is so, so important with how I get through school. So there was a lot of hesitancy when I was applying for it, and I didn't want to have it just because I felt like I didn't deserve it at all, and I felt bad. But then I realized that it was going to help me so much, and it was made for people that were suffering like I was. It's not just a physical disability, psychological and all of those things. It's encompassing the whole body, and you need to take care of your brain. So important.
Yeah. I feel like with all of these things, it's I would never say this to somebody else.
Yes.
But not me, I'm bad.
Yeah, and it's always if someone was like, oh, I'm thinking about it, but I don't, like, said what I said. I'd be like, of course you can apply for it. I would never hesitate for someone else, but the second it came to me, I got nervous, and I felt like I wasn't deserving, and it was such a terrible feeling. So talking it through and being able to tell myself that it's not putting me in a box, it's not going to ruin me, my name isn't flagged in whatever student directory, like, just being able to miss a couple more classes or ask for a deadline on a paper if I need it. It's so not a big deal. And professors I haven't had any professors since then that have treated me differently because of it, or if anything, they treat me differently in a good way. So I think it's definitely worth it, and I'm glad I got over that whole I'm not good enough kind of thing.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's definitely, I think, especially because there's so much happening when you're in school, and there's so much pressure to figure out what am I supposed to do with the rest of my life, how am I going to find a job, I have all this social stuff going on, and then to add this additional thing into how you're trying to figure out your identity and like what feels right and what words feel right to talk about yourself is just really, really hard, especially if you have to do it alone.
Yeah, it's not manageable alone. I tried for so long to do it alone. It's such a good idea to reach out, and it's so relieving, and you do feel better eventually. It might not feel good at first, but it's really, because I watch all of my friends who are so smart and kind and funny, and they're doing these big, great things, and some of them have jobs already for when we graduate, and other ones have no idea. It's just like me in my head trying to keep up when there's nothing to keep up with. So it's just making your own path. You don't have to fall into line and do like the, I don't know, typical steps. Not a thing. I haven't seen anyone do it right. There's no right way.
It's like that post where it's like what people think recovery looks like, and it's a straight line, and then it's like this is what recovery actually looks like, and like I'm like 10 steps behind where I thought I was yesterday, and like but by 2 o'clock tomorrow I'm like back where I was, and it's so disorienting. Yeah.
A lot.
Do you have, so I mean, first of all, thank you for sharing your story and all of this stuff. I think it's so important to feel not alone in these things, and to hear, you know, somebody else say your thoughts and your feelings out loud, and especially dealing with maybe shame or confusion or whatever when, you know, you're reaching out for help or figuring all this stuff out is just so helpful. You kind of just did it, but what if you could have a conversation with yourself, you know, what, in thinking about all of these things, you know, like what are the, you know, and I'm going to link to, you know, we can talk more about Lean on Me. It's going to be included as part of the report for folks who are interested in how they can do it on their campuses. But I think having this real conversation is so important because, like you mentioned earlier, I don't want to give people, I don't think anybody means to give people this idea that, like, you have to be the best, and the only way to help is to be the best, and the only way to do anything good is to be the only one doing it. It just, it's not how humans work, and it's not what you know, a kind of like isolated world is like the antithesis of what we want to try to create in human communities.
It won't be productive.
Yeah, you can't do it alone. So are there things, like, aside from what you shared so far, just like anything you'd want to share with a young person, either, you know, who's not in school yet, who might be kind of trying to do it themselves?
It's a lot. I wish that I could go back and just look at myself and just like chant at myself, like, there's nothing wrong with you. It's not it's obviously something that you need to like figure out and manage, but it doesn't mean that you're less than or broken, or like, I used to say damaged goods all the time, which is such a weird saying, but like I really, really believed it at my core. And I just wish that I could stop I wish I stopped putting myself down when I was already struggling so much, because that was such a huge like obstacle for me to finally get back to a point where it's like I'm just a person trying to figure it out. I'm not doing it right or wrong. I'm definitely struggling a little more, and it's just the only thing to do is like try to take it down a notch with all of that. So it's like, why didn't I ever want to seek help? Like, all it was going to do is make me feel better. And I just always, we already talked about it, but that feeling of like, I don't deserve it, or even like, I don't believe that there's anything going on. Like, I'm just being dramatic, or I'm being like, when I was a teenager, I'd always be like, is this what all teenagers feel like all the time? Because all you hear is that they're all over the place and emotional and all that. If you're experiencing depression or anxiety, that's not a normal feeling, and it can be helped. And I just wish that I didn't put myself down so much, because it would have been such an easier journey towards kind of a not clear mind space, but at least stable. I wouldn't have had to reteach myself that I'm not the worst. Like, it would have been much smoother sailing if I let myself believe that I'm not messed up because of anything. I'm just wired a little differently. And so many other people are too. Not like I'm this one girl in the entire universe that's like gets sad.
Yeah, it's the kind of how you would talk about another person, and also just like knowing you're just a person.
Yeah, it's crazy, because I do, like, I'm majoring in psych and I want to do this for the rest of my life. Like, if I'm a therapist and I'm sitting down and just telling people over and over again, like, you're worth it and you're loved and people care about you, like, thinking of doing that towards myself, like, now it might be a little bit easier, but a couple years ago, that I'd laugh during it. Like, it's so strange that happens. I don't know why. Hope I find out, because that'd be really interesting to know and helpful. But just like, it is like, treat yourself the way that you're treating others, like the opposite of the golden rule or whatever. If my friends came to me and were confiding in me about any mental health problem, I never look at them and be like, you're being dramatic. No, it's not a thing. So like, why do it to yourself? I mean, it's not like you're giving up or working any less than everyone else is. Like, you deserve self-compassion too. And it's really hard to get there, but once you do, like, it feels really good.
Awesome. That was beautiful. Thank you. And thanks again for sharing your experience and sharing some about, you know, the work that you've been involved in at Boston College. And as I mentioned, there's going to be more about Kaileigh's experience and her work with Lean On Me in the college report that will be linked, and you'll be able to find and read and download and share and all of those fun things. So I just wanted to thank you again for taking the time to talk and share and be a part of this work. And thanks to everybody for taking the time to listen.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Everyone's there.